When the pits of Utumno were pierced by light, and the dark throne of Melkor was ground to dust, the dust of the War of the Powers at last settled upon the lands of Middle-earth. In the year 1100 of the Years of the Trees, the Vala brought their greatest enemy captive back to Valinor. In the Ring of Doom, the Mahanaxar, beneath the alternating light of the two trees, Melkor was brought before the throne of Manwë. He was bound fast by Allah's chain and Gainer, a chain so cold and heavy it seemed to hold all the justice and order of the world. Melkor knelt on the ground, but in his dark eyes there was no hint of remorse, only a bottomless malice and a suppressed pride. He begged for pardon with humble words, but this guise could not deceive the eyes of the Vala. At last the sentence was pronounced by Mandos, the keeper of fate, in his voice that held no emotion. Melkor was to be imprisoned in the halls of Mandos, whose walls are made of time and forgetting, and there he would spend 3 long ages, reflecting on the endless sorrow he had brought to Arda. He was then led away, vanishing behind the shadowy gates of Mandos from which none can escape, and a peace that seemed eternal settled upon Valinor. In the year 1101, the Vala convened another council. This time, the subject was the newly saved firstborn children of Iluvatar. They marveled at the beauty and purity of the elves, but also worried for their vulnerability under the shadow of Melkor. Manwë believed that the elves should be summoned from the perilous lands of Middle-earth to Aman, to allow them to bask in the light of the two trees, far from all evil and decay. However, Ulmo, Lord of Waters, raised an objection. He loved the lands and waters of Middle-earth and believed the destiny of the elves was bound to that continent. To forcibly remove them, though done with good intent, might go against the greater design of Iluvatar. But in the end, the majority of the Vala were persuaded by the urgent desire to protect the elves, and they decided to send forth the invitation. Orome the hunter once again mounted his white steed, Nahar, and crossed the sea and mountains to bring the summons of the Vala to the shores of Cuivianen. However, when Orome described the endless light and bliss of Valinor to the elves, he was met with confusion and fear. The lies of Melkor had already planted seeds of doubt in their hearts, and they were uneasy about the intentions of these powerful beings, the Vala. In the year 1102, to dispel their doubts, Orome proposed that the elves choose 3 ambassadors from among themselves to accompany him to Valinor and witness the blessed land with their own eyes. The elves agreed. They chose 3 of their most revered leaders: Ingwi of the Vanir, who had golden hair and a noble soul; Finwi of the Noldor, whose eyes burned with a thirst for knowledge; and Elwi of the Teleri, who was the tallest of all, with hair like a silver waterfall and a voice like music. These 3 elven ambassadors embarked on the journey to the west. When they passed through the Pelori Mountains and for the first time saw the mingling light of the 2 trees, Telperion and Laurelin, they were utterly conquered by the indescribable magnificence and holiness. Standing in the light, they felt every inch of their souls being purified and uplifted. During their brief stay in Valinor, they witnessed the wisdom and benevolence of the Vala and felt the undying beauty of the land. In the year 1104, when they returned to their kin at Cuivianen, their eyes still shone with the light of the trees. With the most ardent words, they described the wonders of Valinor, persuading their people to accept the summons of the Vala and undertake the great journey to the light. Their words kindled the hearts of most of the elves, but in some, the love for the starlit skies of Middle-earth and the fear of the unknown journey outweighed the longing for a distant light. Thus, in the year 1105, the first sundering of the elves occurred, a sorrowful and fated parting. Those who were willing to undertake the journey were thereafter called the Eldar, the people of the stars, while those who chose to remain behind were called the Avori, the unwilling. The Eldar, in 3 hosts, set forth westward in a great procession under the guidance of Orome. The Vanir followed Ingwi, for they yearned most for the light of the Vala. The Noldor followed Finwi, eager to learn the knowledge and crafts of the Vala. And the Teleri, the largest host, were led jointly by Elwi and his brother Olwe. It was an unprecedented migration, the youth of a race, marching slowly beneath the starlight. The journey was long and arduous. In the year 1115, as the hosts of the Eldar passed through the vast forest that would later be called Greenwood the Great and came to the banks of the great river Anduin, they were daunted by the rushing waters before them and the sight of the towering, mist-shrouded mountains in the distance. Some of the Teleri grew weary and afraid and wished to go no further. Led by an elf named Lenwë, A part of them broke away from the main host and journeyed south along the river. They became the Nander, lovers of forests and rivers. This was the second sundering of the elves. Every choice led their fates down different streams. In the year 1125, the Vanir and the Noldor, who marched in the van, finally reached the westernmost shores of Middle-earth and entered the lands that would later be known as Beleriand. But when they stood upon the coast and saw the endless surging waves of the great sea Balaguer, an unprecedented awe and fear seized their hearts. The voice of the sea sounded to them as both a summons and a roar. They halted their march, daring not to proceed. Seeing this, Orome returned to Valinor alone to seek the aid of Ulmo, Lord of Waters. 3 years later, in 1128, the more slowly moving Teleri also crossed the Blue Mountains and entered Beleriand. They settled in the wide lands east of the River Gellan, awaiting news from the Van and for their lost king. In the year 1130, an event occurred that would change the destiny of the Teleri. Their king Elwi, after visiting the camp of Finwë, king of the Noldor, was journeying back alone. As he passed through the forest of Nan Elmoth, he heard the song of nightingales, a song so beautiful it seemed not of the mortal world. Drawn by the song, he entered a glade. There he saw a lady, bathed in a silver light that came neither from the stars nor the moon, but from within herself. She was Melian the Maya, who had come from Valinor to Middle-earth to wander in its ancient forests. When Elwi's eyes met Melian's, a powerful enchantment fell upon them. He reached out and took her hand, and in that moment time seemed to stand still. They stood silent in the depths of the forest, while the two trees in far Valinor bloomed and faded again and again. His people could not find him and they mourned him as lost. Meanwhile, in the year 1132, Ulmo, Lord of Waters, answered Orome's plea. He came to the shores of Beleriand and with his voice as deep as the sea, he calmed the fears of the Vanir and the Noldor. Then with his divine power he uprooted a great island from the seabed and steered it like a vast ship into the Bay of Baelor. The Vanir and the Noldor boarded this moving isle and, drawn by Ulmo, they floated slowly toward the shining shore of Aman. During the long voyage, a corner of the island was broken off upon a reef and remained in the middle of the sea, becoming the Isle of Baelor. But the main host continued westward, leaving the starlit skies of Middle-earth behind them forever.